Hey, what's going on, everyone? I am trying to make some time to get back into the garage to fix my stuff. Now, my goal moving forward is to try to have a once a week garage type video where we try to fix all of our broken stuff. Pretty much everything I have at this point is broken. Last video I put up showed how this one we broke the motor block, the transmission case, and a whole bunch of other stuff. On this one over here, the damage, now that I got the wheel apart and everything, it's much worse than I thought it was. Kind of seems to be a common theme for me these days, is the damage is much worse. And then we're gonna get underway on this Jeep TJ build. So got a ton of stuff going on. But the thing is, it is summer in Western Colorado, and it's very hard for me to just like sit here in this super hot garage and look up at these amazing mountains that we live close to and not want to get up and go tour around the mountains a bit, because summers here are short. We have weeks left until like up in the mountains, the snow starts hitting the top of the mountains. So we got to make use of that time and get up there and go start hitting those mountains. What we decided to do, well, let's go take our Jeep one Sunday for a run up in the mountains, because we had an upcoming overland type trip, multi-day camping trip, and we wanted to be ready for that. So we get into our Jeep, we go up and we go hit Yankee Boy Basin, one of the most scenic, beautiful places in all of Colorado. Now, I just recently, my last video that I put out is on Yankee Boy Basin, and we get up there and we're just having an awesome day. And I have the window down and I'm driving the Jeep, our 2015 Jeep Rubicon, and we start going around the corner, and every time we're in four-wheel drive going around the corner, I hear this noise right here.
Look, imagine.
I'm thinking in my head, as we're doing this, I just wanted to go out and have a nice day in the mountains and kind of forget about all this other broken stuff. But as that noise popped up, I realized I gotta fix this before the next weekend trip, because we're going on a multi-day camping trip. So that's kind of how it goes sometimes, is I just have a few short days to get back to the house, get this fixed, and make sure everything's ready. So what we did, I get the Jeep back home after an amazing day up in the mountains. I pull the Jeep into the garage and put it up on jack stands. I start looking around to try to figure out where that noise is coming from. Do we have a bad U-joint? Do we have a bad wheel bearing? I mean, there's a number of things. Could we have a piece of hardware or suspension joint or something that's getting loose? So I get it up on jack stands and I start, wiggling everything in the front. That's usually what I do. If you hear a noise coming from somewhere, you get it up in the air and start wiggling everything, seeing if something's loose. Finally, I grab the driveline and I start shaking the driveline. And that's where I was able to replicate that noise that I was able to catch on our 360 camera video right here. Once I realized, I was pretty sure it was the driveline. Now, I had heard that a lot of people, if they put a lift on their Jeep JK, the drive lines wouldn't last very long at all. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. I was going to have to replace this drive line at some point. Ours has about a 3 or 3.5 inch lift, I can't remember. And this thing has 90,000 miles on it. And surprisingly, the drive line had lasted that long. So I knew in the back of my mind, we're going to have to do this at some point. So typically, I'd want to get online and go to one of the big 4x4 companies, but I didn't have much time. So what I did is I got on O'Reilly's, and I was just going to see if they had a replacement part that I could just fix the driveline quick. So even O'Reilly's, basically all they had was entire replacement drive lines to choose from. And I had to make sure to pick the 4-door and not the 2-door, because they're going to be different lengths. And I had to make sure, one thing I noticed, that they only had replacement drive lines that had like double cardons with U-joints, rather than that Jeep type, actually I don't even know what it's called right now, but instead of the stock Jeep type driveline. So just from my experience in the past, those double cardons, especially on stock Jeeps, are much better and they don't vibrate as much. So what I did is I ordered from O'Reilly, and it was much quicker. I had that entire driveline the next day at 10 a.m. I mean, I would have rather gone to like a Dave Woods or something like that, but I really didn't have time. So I ordered that driveline right from O'Reilly's, went and picked it up the next day. O'Reilly's is becoming one of my favorite auto parts store. They always seem to have everything in stock, and they have more of an option, so their shipping seems to be quicker, and that's just my opinion. I used to be an AutoZone person. It used to seem like they had better, but now I'm liking O'Reilly's better. Anyway, I go get the driveline, and then same thing, I jack the Jeep up in the air and go to start replacing the driveline. Now the front bolts on the driveline, they were on there pretty tight. It's a super simple job anybody can do, and it took some really basic tools. However, those front bolts, they used a ton of Loctite on them, and they came out hard the entire way. Now the back bolts were a little bit more of a pain to get to without dropping the skid plate and everything. And like anybody else, I'm always gonna go with the easiest type path that you can go. I was able to get those bolts off without having to drop the skid plate and everything. And the new driveline came with some new 4 new bolts to put in its place. Now the biggest, well, it came with a new yoke. So that's probably the most challenging part of that job, is that you have to change out the yoke. And so you got to have a bigger socket than a lot of people might have in their home garage. You get that bolt, that nut off in the middle of the yoke, pull the yoke out, comes off super easy, then put the new yoke on there and then torque it down to spec. All right, here is the yoke from the stock Jeep driveline. Like I said, there's just a nut in the middle and then the bolts around there. And it just mounts like this. And you can see how much play there was right here. This is what wears out. You can listen to that. That's what starts making all that noise. So yeah, it doesn't seem like anybody really stocks these just to replace this. They just recommend replacing the entire driveline. So, and just the 4 bolts down here. This driveline, this U-joint wasn't bad yet, but it was making a lot of noise. But anyway, at least now we got a nice new driveline. Last weekend, this front driveline was making all kinds of racket. We have a new one with nice new U-joints and a double cardan versus just this setup. So getting this all put in, have that nice new driveline. It's a Jeep thing. All right, brand new driveline, upgraded. Should be good to go. Hopefully no more clicking when I make turns. It's starting to click really loud. And then put the driveline up to it, and then you just have 4 bolts that you need to screw in. So overall, the replacement was super easy. There's a ton of available drivelines out there. Even O'Reilly's carries an entire driveline for this, because I'm pretty sure this is so common. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, is if you have this weird clicking noise or popping noise coming from the front of your Jeep, well, the driveline's definitely a good place to look. And I thought maybe this could be helpful to some other people who are running into the same things. The good news is I was able to get that driveline fixed. I also had to replace the battery in the Jeep, as everything's good to go. The Jeep ran great for the entire next weekend. We didn't have that noise at all. So just a couple things, you know, I guess they might say, it's a Jeep thing. You wouldn't understand. You know, these are just the type of things. It's a 90,000 mile Jeep. So some of the common things we've had to replace in that so far, just for people who might be interested or might want to know, we've had to replace the oil cooler up in the valley of the engine. That's a very common thing to have happen on those JKs. We've been through 2 batteries now. The driveline was the first time we've had to replace that. The rear brakes, we've had to do those. You have all your regular oil changes and such, and I feel like there was one other thing that I can't. Oh, I've had a thermostat, just had a thermostat go bad. That's not a big deal. It's just all these like little nuisance problems. I would say the most extensive one was that oil cooler, which was kind of a pain to replace, and that's very common. Seems like everybody's, you know, goes out around like 60 to 100,000 miles, and it starts leaking oil down the back of the engine. All right, so just a couple other updates. What we got going on is I got the knuckle taken apart over there on the rear steer rock crawler. I've also got mounted up these nice new BFG reds. That's right, we're putting reds back on this. And if you've never done tires at home, I highly recommend this Bead Buster XB 550. I did a video last year on mounting all of these tires, I did nittos on both cars with that. And for breaking the inside bead, the outside bead, you just take the bolts off. The inside bead, this thing works amazing. So I did a video on that last year. That's why I didn't make another video on this, and I'll just link that video here. So I got everything apart here, and you can see the damage was much worse than we expected. It actually cracked the knuckle through right there, but not on the top. Just through the side right here. So what I'm going to do is grind all of that out and then reheat the knuckle and re-weld it. This is where we ended up breaking. We basically had both rims completely stuck against the rock. It was metal on rock, and if we tried to steer at all, it wouldn't steer, it wouldn't go forward, it wouldn't go backwards. We were trying to do front digs to get it to pop up out of there, and eventually I think this is where everything let go. Welding the cast iron can be challenging sometimes. However, all four of these knuckles have held up pretty good. So the amount of damage totaled up to, we've got an outer stub shaft here that got damaged. It got galled up. It took the zerks off of the U-joint, so I just ordered a new U-joint. It's a 300M chromoly U-joint. I've got a new wheel bearing on the way. These wheel bearings aren't just stock. They're bored out to 35 spline, and they're re-drilled to 8 on 6.5 instead of the Ford pattern, as well as the rotor, because the rotor's re-drilled out as well. And I do have spares of those. However, I was saving this one for my other Jeep project. I do have some of these already that I found on Marketplace that I like to keep around. But I figured if I'm just ordering some stuff, we'll start with a nice new bearing instead of this used one. The damage added up pretty quick. Couple that with the fact that I already just had these new tires that have been sitting here waiting to mount. So we got all that done. So this one should be up and going here pretty soon. Another thing I might do is replace that front steering ram. I did catch it off a rock not too long ago, put a couple little scratches on it. I do have a spare one sitting here, or I might just wait till that thing starts leaking before I put that new one in. I don't know. There's some other stuff I wanted to do to this, but I just got too many other projects going on right now, so it might have to wait. I know welding the cast isn't always the most desirable thing. However, we preheated these. We used a combination of MIG and that Easy Weld TIG wire, which is specially designed for cast, and all four of these have held up really well. I feel like this was an extraordinary amount of stress that this was put through where it cracked right there, because I haven't had any problem on the rest of these. And due to the fact that, one more thing, the amount of stress that happened on that knuckle was extraordinary, because this wheel bearing actually broke in two. You can see it actually broke the flange right there. This actually goes like that, and it broke that, and then it broke all of the bearings out of there. What I want to do is get this all back together. I'll make a video on fixing all that and get this thing out of here, then get back to work on these two. So what I'm going to do is disassemble this one and this one at the same time. I now have the entire body off of this lifted up in the air. I've got some jack stands there. I've got some extra supports hanging from the ceiling. Those go actually through the trusses. And then I keep this engine lift in place to help make sure that that one of these straps isn't gonna break. So then what I'm gonna start doing, with all of this up out of the way, I'm gonna cut these brackets off. Cut all the stock suspension brackets off once you have more room. I got plenty of room now. Then I'm going to take off this transmission and transfer case, and that's where I'm going to replace it from a standard transmission to an automatic that I've been sitting on for a couple years right over here. I've got this RH32 transmission that's been on this old 4.0 for many years, just sitting here waiting for a project. Then I have this Dana 300 transfer case that I need to clean up, and I'm gonna put behind there too, and I'm gonna have to do a Dana 300 flip. But I'd rather have that Dana 300 than the MP231, because then it's gear driven versus chain driven, and because you can twin stick it. You can do front digs and front only and all that kind of stuff a whole lot easier. But I will have to flip it. I've done a little research on that, so some people might be interested in that as well. That'll be coming up. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna build some rock sliders for this. That's what we're gonna start with, because we're gonna attach our cage to that. Now you can see down here, I've got 2-inch DOM, 1.75-inch DOM, and 1.5-inch DOM. Those are all for different projects. But I'm gonna build the cage for this out of 2-inch DOM. And that way it's all to spec for Ultra 4 if we wanna do that in the future. Then we can run it in hammers if we want to in the stock class. So that's why we're building it that way. Then we're gonna build our own suspension for this, and that's where we're gonna put these axles. Now these axles I bought a couple years ago for dirt cheap. What do you think about this project, Liz?
Looks like a lot of work.
Are you gonna be helping me?
I'm not gonna do the metal work.
You don't want to start bending some tube up and doing some tube notching?
I'll have input. I'll tell you did it wrong.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I suppose there's always that.
Just kidding. I'm gonna stay out of it until it's all one piece.
Until it's all one piece?
Yeah, then I'll come out here and I'll help you with other stuff, not grinding, cutting, or welding.
That's why I like to do all my like major metal work all at once. So, you know, you keep the mess to a minimum. It's like just make one big mess, clean it all up, and then you just do little bits of welding here and there. Who's that? Who's that helper?
Look who's here to help.
Is that Pat Boy?
Oh.
All right, so anyway, I'm going to start getting underway with this real shortly. Once I get a good start on this, and then I get all these brackets cut off and figure out where everything's going and order some. Oh, you don't like that, huh? So once I do all that, then I'll start taking this thing apart and, you know, figuring out what I all need there and fixing the tubing. So that's kind of my plan going forward. Fix this first, start on that, then figure out what we all need to replace on this. So a lot of work for sure. But then I can also, going back to the yellow Jeep, I can get these axles slid under there and figure out all the suspension parts I need too. The good thing about these is somebody already did the dirty work and cut all the brackets off and welded trusses to them. I'll have to just go back through those welds and double check everything, but that's a huge amount of work. That's the thing I hate most about junkyard axles, is cutting off the brackets. That's the dirtiest, nastiest part of these things. So good news there. And I have all the internal parts mostly over there already, just from other projects. So
Well, maybe since you broke this one, maybe you could put the good axle on this one.
well, that's true. Then what we can.
Idea.
But you want to race under that one?
I don't know, but that's a better one for this. And it would steer sharper.
Well, it would steer sharper and it's high
And
pinion.
you already broke it.
So this one's better because it turns sharper and it's got a high pinion. Or this is a kingpin and it doesn't turn as sharp.
We have to replace it anyways.
And it's low pinion.
That's actually not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea.
That thing ain't gonna go very fast anyways.
Well, that's something we'll have to figure out. Do we want to put this axle under that? Yeah, something we'll have to try to figure out.
I'm full of good ideas today.
Full of good ideas. Are you going to do all the work?
As you just said, all the brackets are already cut off and there's no more work.
Which would be easier to put coil springs on? That's the big question. That's what I have to figure out.
Yeah.
Because to have this in the stock class, I still have to retain the stock suspension component, so it'd have to be just coils. I can't just put coilovers on it, which is so easy. Gotta figure out where you can mount big old coils on either one of these, so that's something else we'll have to figure out. But I have thought about that. I was just wondering which would be the best path to go forward.
Probably put the nicest one on your wife's car, right?
We'll see.
We'll see which he chooses.
Oh. well, yeah, we'll figure out, yeah. Put that one, which I was saving for this project, under this one, or vice versa, I don't know. But, we'll make it the executive decision soon, huh?
Yeah.
Because they have to. You got to get moving with this. You need to get moving. King of the Hammers is how many months away? 6? September, October, November, December, January. Yeah. So if we actually realistically wanted to get this thing out there for that, we got to get moving now. All these dogs keep distracting me. So anyway, that's the latest updates. Just gonna keep chipping away at this. Good news, literally as we were filming this, FedEx just showed up with our parts from Brannock. So we've got a nice brand new U-joint right here. Nice new U-joint. We have a nice new wheel bearing, all drilled out, bored out in the middle, and re-drilled to 8 on 6.5. And we have our new stub shaft. These stub shafts are clearance to 50 degrees right here. That's why I have spare stubs I could put in there, but they're not clearance to 50 degrees. So if I put them in, I'd still have to take them back out and have them clearance. So might as well just put in a new one that's all clearance. So I'm gonna start on that. I'm gonna start on this really soon. Get this thing all back together so at least it's a usable rock crawler again. I'll make a video on the repairs, how it all went, and I'm really gonna focus on the garage and keep these projects moving.